did for grand on bus or union bus. Yeah, or I
had to decide what I was doing.
and I but I was interested in it.
As soon as it sits in front of me,
And I want to have that. Yeah, I didn't know her yet. Yeah. And I knew that she was living in New Jersey, but she got on the bus in Greensboro. But I want you to have that
brain and heart divorced a decade ago over who was to blame about how big of a mess I have become.
Eventually, they couldn't be in the same room with each other.
Now my head and heart share custody of me. I stay with my brain during the week, and my heart gets me on the weekends.
They never speak to one another. Instead, they give me the same note to pass to each other every week.
And their notes they send to one another always says the same thing. This is all your fault.
On Sundays, my heart complains about how my head has let me down in the past.
And on Wednesdays, my head lists all of the times my heart has screwed things up for me in the future.
They blame each other for the state of my life.
There's been a lot of yelling and crying, so lately I've been spending a lot of time with my gut, who serves as my unofficial therapist.
Most nights I sneak out of the window in my rib cage and slide down my spine and collapse on my gut's plush leather chair that's always open for me. And I just sit until the sun comes up.
Last evening, my gut asked me if I was having a hard time being caught between my heart and my head.
I nodded. I said I didn't know if I could live with either of them anymore.
My heart is always sad about something that happened yesterday, while my head is always worried about something that may happen tomorrow, I lamented.
My gut squeezed my hand. I just can't live with my mistakes of the past or my anxiety about the future. I sighed.
My gut smiled and said, in that case, you should go stay with your lungs for a while.
I was confused. The look on my face gave it away. If you are exhausted about your heart's obsession with the fixed past and your mind's focus on the uncertain future, your lungs are the perfect place for you.
There is no yesterday in your lungs. There is no tomorrow there either. There's only now. There is only inhale. There is only exhale. There is only this moment. There is only breath.
And in that breath, you can rest while your heart and head work their relationship out.
This morning, while my brain was busy reading tea leaves and while my heart was staring at old photographs, I packed a little bag and walked to the door of my lungs.
Before I could even knock, she opened the door with a smile, and as a gust of air embraced me, she said, "What took you so long?" Here we seek that rest and that wholeness, and in that spirit, let us worship together. Welcome to worship at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Greensboro in person and online. I'm the Reverend Sadie Lansdale, and I'm the minister of this congregation. Unitarian Universalists believe that each person has a trustworthy relationship with the Spirit, with the holy, with the source of all life, with what some call God, though we name it and know it differently from one another. And we believe that because we are interconnected, nobody is free until we all are free. So we strive to build our beloved community here on earth, in our fellowship with one another, and in our work for justice. Whoever you are, whomever you love, however you have found your way here, welcome. I have some questions for you this morning. Should you have your cell phone on during church making noise? Should you? No. Should you turn it off or on silent? Should you take your mask off during the service unless you're a worship leader who has shown proof of vaccination? No. Where are we singing? Outside. If you're joining us online, go ahead and say hello in the chat. We can't see it, but we know that you can fellowship with each other. Somebody tell me what these wristbands are for. Hugging. Comfort level. What's the green one for? Yeah, green. Handshakes are welcome. You can come up to me. You can ask if I want a hug. Yellow, you can say hi to me, maybe give me an elbow bump or something, but we're not touching. Red, you can greet me warmly, but from at least 6 feet away. So take a minute, look around you, hold up your wristbands if you want. This is our practice of consent. This is how we care for each other. This is how we make our gatherings possible, knowing there are safety precautions in place and risks we take because they make our lives beautiful.
My name is Betsy Lindsay, and I'm a member of this congregation. Susan Hill will light our chalice this morning. Please join me in our chalice lighting words, which are in your order of service. We light this chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, to remind us to connect in spirituality and service, to care for each other in the world, and create loving community. Thank you, Susan. If you'll now join me in reading our church covenant, which is also in your order of service. A covenant contains the promises that we make to one another in response to the great gift of living, holding ourselves to our holiest and highest aspirations. We, members of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Greensboro, do covenant to promote a search for personal meaning, respecting the individual truth in a community process of quest. Speak and act with caring, courtesy, and love, thereby maintaining emotional, physical, and spiritual safety for all. Support UUCG and denominational efforts with our resources. Combat justice while promoting equality. Nurture our children on their spiritual journey. Hold ourselves to this covenant, especially during times of conflict and disagreement.
Our opening hymn is an old labor song, Bread and Roses. As we come marching, marching in the beauty of the day, a million darkened kitchens, 1,000 mill lofts gray, are touched with all the radiance that a sudden sun discloses. For the people hear us singing, bread and roses, bread and roses. As we go marching, marching, we battle to for men, for they are in the struggle, and together we will win. Our lives shall not be sweated from birth until life closes. Hearts starve as well as bodies. Give us bread, but give us roses. As we go marching, marching, unnumbered women dead go crying through our singing, their ancient call for bread, small art and love and beauty, their trudging spirits new. Yes, it is bread we fight for, but we fight for roses too. As we come marching, marching, we're standing proud and tall, for the rising of the women is the rising of us all. No more the drudge and idler tend the toil where one reposes, but a sharing of life's glories, bread and How beautiful it is to be together. We gather in gratitude this morning, turning our hearts to thanks and praise for the gift of living, in the presence of the Spirit that animates all life, and in the knowledge that we are powerfully, profoundly connected to all that is, all that has been, and all that will be. At any time during our service, you can go to our Joys and Sorrows table to light a candle, a symbol of the ways our burdens are eased and our joys are magnified, knowing they are held in common. Though it seems that the lamp at the Joys and Sorrows table has gone out. Nora, will you get the matches? They're right there. I invite you now to offer the names of those people on your hearts, living or dead, near or far, that this community might hold them in prayer and in love. You can type them in the comments if you're joining us online, and you can speak them now. And Corey and Cicely Jones, who have had their baby. They are recovering at home. Information about how to feed them will be in your newsletter. If you would like your joys and sorrows included in worship, check your newsletter for instructions on emailing them. During these next few minutes of silence, you can focus on something you're grateful for, someone you're remembering especially today, or just the sensation of your chair supporting you. Will you find a comfortable place in your seat and take a few easy breaths as we settle into our shared silence together? We send all of these prayers, spoken and silent, up to the love that holds us all. Will you pray with me? All the preachers I know scan the headlines every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday early for the names and places of death to add to that morning's prayers, to make sure we don't miss this tragedy or that one, as if we are the bean counters for the Spirit. Nonetheless, the prayer remains mostly the same. Where there is violence, let there be just peace. Where there is terror, let there be instead community and human flourishing. Where we are tempted to tune it all out, help us to keep our hearts open. Where we are tempted to give in to despair for our own lives and for the lives of those we love, help us to hold fast to the joy that needs no explanation. We ask these things for ourselves, for those we love, and for those we do not love. Amen. We sing the things we cannot say, our prayer, our yearning, our hope, our heartbreak. Will you stay seated and join me in our humming meditation, voice still and small. Happy Labor Day weekend. In that spirit, and in the spirit evoked by our opening hymn, a song about primarily human wholeness, we're going to do a body scan meditation. You can follow along with me. You can sit there and space out. You are the one who knows what your body needs at this moment. Prepare yourself, become even more comfortable. Start at the top of your head. Thank it for all it carries around for you. All your great ideas, all your worries, everything you know, and more importantly, your curiosity about all the things you don't know. Offer some gratitude to your head. Move down to your neck. Thank it for holding your head up. It's very heavy. I'm going to wiggle it around, give it a break, turn it from side to side if that feels comfortable. Your shoulders, too, for all they carry. You might roll them, give them little circles. Oh. And down your arms. Give yourself a hug. Your arms that embrace, your hands. Hands that tend, hands that type or work or lift or hammer. Hands that soothe the brow. You might thank them. Now to your back, your core, your hips, your seat, what steadies you, anchors you, the site of your power and your convictions, your presence, the part of you that helps you take up the space that is yours, and no less. Down your legs, and your knees, natural or artificial. How they hinge to propel you. How they work to root you and provide your power. All the way down to your feet. Your connection to the earth, the source of life beneath the ground, beneath the foundation of the building, beneath the floor, beneath your shoes. Remember that you are a whole human being with a whole body, that though they sometimes cause us pain and inconvenience, nonetheless a body is a blessing, and that includes yours. And that the cost of poor working conditions and labor violations is a physical cost. May we never forget.
One of the ways that we live out our mission to create loving community is to contribute financially to the ministries of this congregation and to the good work of our community partners. In light of the news out of Texas about abortion restrictions, it is imperative that we understand that it is not the 1950s anymore. There are ways to secure safe, self-managed abortions, especially early in a pregnancy, through pills commonly called Plan C. This is not to say that the Texas law making abortion functionally illegal after 6 weeks is not scary, because it is. But it is to remind us all that we have a duty as seekers of the truth to spread accurate information about reproductive care. The scary part here is not about the scary part here is about the possible legal repercussions for seeking an abortion in this way. Not medical consequences like in the past. Reproductive justice leaders are saying that it is irresponsible to behave as if there are no safe options other than a licensed medical provider, even as they fight to keep those options legal and to make them truly accessible. So, in the spirit of supporting access, we are sharing the plate with Carolina Abortion Fund. We know that without money, abortion rights are not enough. We know that it is mostly poor people and people of color who will suffer. So we will celebrate the blessing that is abortion care. We remember that a pregnant person is a life that matters too, not just the host of a future life. We recall that before the rallying cry was, "My body, my choice," it was free abortion on demand without apology. To honor those brave people who paved the way for safety and dignity in reproductive care, we give generously. If you'd like to make a contribution via PayPal to the church for our offering to be split with the Carolina Abortion Fund, you can do so on our website. You can also mail a check. Ushers will come forward to collect the offering with long baskets. Our offering will now be safely, gratefully received.
From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and by this I give, together we share, and by this we live.
Our reading this morning comes to us from the poet Wendell Berry. It's entitled Manifesto, the Mad Farmer Liberation Front. Love the quick profit, the annual raise, vacation with pay. Want more of everything ready-made. Be afraid to know your neighbors. and to die. And you will have a window in your head. Not even your future will be a mystery. Your mind will be punched in a card and shut away in a little drawer. When they want you to buy something, they will call you. When they want you to die for profit, they will let you know. So friends, every day, do something that won't compute. Love the Lord. Love the world. Work for nothing. Take all that you have and be poor. Love someone who does not deserve it. Denounce the government and embrace the flag. Hope to live in that free republic for which it stands. Give your approval to all you cannot understand. Praise ignorance, for what man has not encountered, he has not destroyed. Ask the questions that have no answers. Invest in the millennium. Plant sequoias. Say that your main crop is the forest that you did not plant, that you will not live to harvest. Say that the leaves are harvested when they have rotted into the mold. Call that prophet. Prophecy such returns. Put your faith in the 2 inches of humus. Let's try that again. Put your faith in the 2 inches of humus that will build under the trees every 1,000 years. It's a lot of humus. Listen to the carrion. Put your ear close and hear the faint chattering of the songs that are to come. Expect the end of the world. Laugh. Laughter is immeasurable. Be joyful, though you have considered all the facts. So long as women do not go cheap for power, please women more than men. Go with your love to the fields. Lie easy in the shade. Rest your head in her lap. Swear allegiance to what is nighest in your thoughts. As soon as the generals and the politicos can predict the motions of your mind, lose it. Leave it as a sign to mark the false trail, the way you didn't go. Be like the fox who makes more tracks than necessary, some in the wrong direction. Practice resurrection.
Thank you, Betsy, and thank you, Wendell. When they want you to die for profit, they will let you know. Happy Labor Day, everybody. It's 1984 in Delice, Wales, and the miners are on strike. A young miner's wife named Sean James is boxing up the bare necessities to get a family through the week, and she's doing this by the hundreds. Margaret Thatcher is using police to break up picket lines in her brutal crackdown on the miners and on the power of organized labor in general. Meanwhile, a young gay Irishman in London is holding a meeting with a few of his friends in a gay bookstore. His name is Mark Ashton. He's the main character of the 2014 movie Pride. If I could just show you that movie right now, we'd have a 2-hour sermon, we'd all cry, and then we'd go home inspired. But alas, I can't do that, though I recommend that you do watch it. Do something that does not compute, says the poet. The movie opens in Pride, at the Pride March in London in 1984. Mark comes up to his friends and says, we need to take up a collection to support the miners. And his friends are like, well, what are you talking about? We're holding our banners, we're marching for our rights. What's the deal? And he says, the police beat them, Margaret Thatcher hates them, and they're slandered in the press. Does that sound familiar to you? So they start this group called Lesbians and Gay Men Support the Miners. They collect a bunch of money. The real Mark Ashton, in an interview later, said, if you're an oppressed community, you have to care about other oppressed communities. It does not make any sense that you just focus on your own, you join together. What the movie doesn't mention, but I think is important to know to be faithful to the ideological and intellectual history of this movement, is that Mark Ashton was a committed communist and a member of the Communist Party of Great Britain. That's not mentioned in the movie to avoid alienating American audiences, but it does explain his commitment to labor power, to the power of working people, especially as someone who's trying to convene a support group and raise money for a strike fund. So they raise a bunch of money, and then they realize they don't know any miners. So they don't know how to give it to them. But they meet in this bookstore, and it turns out that the guy who owns the bookstore is a guy named Gethin. He's Welsh. He takes out a map, and he's like, he's sort of older and like, okay, I will provide the space for these young radicals to like do their thing. And he takes out a map, and he's like, oh, for God's sake, okay. And he shows them Wales and where mining towns are. And he suggests that they pick one, and they call up the town council. So they do. They call up the council in Delice, Wales, and they leave a message. And they say, we are lesbians and gay men support the miners, and we have a bunch of money that we would like to send to you. And they don't get a phone call back for a while. And they're wondering why. And some of them are concerned that the reason they're not getting a phone call back is because of prejudice. And Mark says, they're on strike, they're busy. And the other guys are like, okay, come on. Don't be so naive, don't be so idealistic. They don't want our money. And then they use a bunch of language to refer to themselves, which as a straight person, I will not repeat. But, they understand the slurs thrown at them, and they're saying, these people are prejudiced, they don't want to hear from us, and they don't even want our money. And someone suggests, well, we can just send it to them. They don't have to know who it's from. And Mark says no. Mark says, absolutely not. We are unapologetic about who we are. We are comrades in this struggle. We share a common enemy, and we share a common cause. And we are not going to pretend to be who we aren't. So meanwhile, the committee in Delice is reviewing this message that they got on the phone, and they're discussing amongst themselves. The town council is discussing amongst themselves, well, what should they do? Do they accept the money? Should they invite this group to come and stay with them like they have all the other support groups? And they do something that might sound very familiar to you. It was very familiar to me I have seen this in my efforts to come alongside some of these struggles and to bring others alongside, and particularly in white liberal crowds. This is what they say, and this is what I have heard. It's not us. We're not prejudiced. But some people might be. Some people might not be comfortable. It's not me. I don't have an issue with anybody. It's not me. I know you're laughing because you know what I'm talking about. It's not me. But, some of my neighbors or some people in the neighborhood, or in this case, it's the men. It's the miners. Be afraid to know your neighbors and to die, says the poet. So Sean James, the one who's packing up all the food for the families, she speaks up at this meeting and she says, they want to support us, their money is as good as anybody else's, bring them out. And eventually the committee agrees, though it's pretty clear that there's some trepidation. So she goes home, talks to her husband who's been on the picket lines, and she's pretty horrified by his reaction, because he says, well, I'm not prejudiced, I'm a realist. And she reminds him that she doesn't care and that they're in the middle of a strike, they need money for the strike fund, and she is one of the people responsible for feeding the families of the striking workers, thank you very much, and they will be taking the money. Excommunicate me from the church of reasonable people. I'm not prejudiced, I'm just a realist. So a miner named Di Donovan comes down to London to meet them, and he heard the message, but it wasn't super clear to me how this part happens, but I think he doesn't really hear the message clearly, so he doesn't actually know who it is he's going to meet. So he sits down in a diner, and he looks around, and he's like, well, you guys are the first gay people I've ever met. And Mark says, that you know of? And he's like, okay, well, that's a good point. And then they say, you're the first miner we've ever met. And he says, Di says, please take my thanks and the thanks of all the miners in Delice and in our surrounding communities and take them back to your community and just tell them from the bottom of our hearts that we really, really appreciate your support and your charity in this struggle. And Mark says, who fancies a pint? So they all go to the bar, and there's a big drag show, and Di looks like kind of out of place. I mean, you're supposed to look at this scene and be like, that is the straightest looking man I've ever seen in my whole life, right? So the sort of premise of this scene is he is doing something out of his element, and he's kind of uncomfortable, and the whole crowd is kind of like, well, why is this guy here? And they have reason to wonder about what he believes. And he gets up there and he makes a couple jokes, and then you hear him say sincerely, and the room and the crowd, the tone in the crowd really changes. He says, when you're in a battle against an enemy so much bigger and so much stronger than you, to find out you had a friend you never knew existed, that's the best feeling in the world. So he extends the invitation for LGSM to come out to Delice, and they do. And they receive a very warm welcome from some people and kind of a frosty welcome from other people. They have this big party in the Union Hall, and they're sort of mingling, but it's pretty clear that they're the welcoming committee is not out in full force. Maybe we'll put it that way. It's sort of like, well, we're supposed to kind of host you, but we don't really know what to say. It's very uncomfortable. And they're sleeping on Di's floor. Him and his wife have put them up in their house. And some of them wonder aloud in the middle of the night after that first sort of uncomfortable meeting, should we just get out of here? Should we just go back to London? Because they don't really seem thrilled that we're here, and they seem kind of uncomfortable, and why don't we let's get out of here? And Mark says, absolutely no. So this is an interesting part of the movie. I'm a student of Bowen family systems theory, and one of the core concepts of Bowen theory is differentiation of self. So I'm watching this movie, I'm texting my mentor, like, you've got to watch this movie, Pride, you've got to look at the character Mark Ashton, it's going to be super interesting for you. But differentiation is sometimes used to refer to like teen rebellion. That's not a correct application of the concept according to Murray Bowen. So what this means is biologically, differentiation is finding your purpose. Cells start the same and then they differentiate, right? So a nerve cell becomes a nerve cell. It's not a muscle cell. It has its purpose. And Murray Bowen applies this theory to human beings, that we discover our own purpose, right? And it is the clear purpose of this project of solidarity that allows Mark to stick it out. So the sort of the pursuit of differentiation of self has three components: make a stand, stay in touch, keep your cool. Maybe another sermon on that someday, but the point is, Mark Ashton really exemplifies all of these characteristics, right? So he makes a stand. He's the one who earlier says, we're not going to not tell them who we are. We're not going to just send the money and not communicate about who we are. We're gay, we're lesbian, we're proud, and we are in struggle together. But he also says, no, we're not going to slip out in the middle of the night either. We're not going to just bail. We're going to stay in relationship. And the reason why, right, is because he has this deep conviction about the shared struggle. So to illuminate the shared struggle in a sort of funny way, Gethin, the bookstore owner, has a partner named Jonathan. And Jonathan is the most obviously flamboyant guy in this group. He's also the oldest one. And he is advising Sean on the illegal activities of the police. So he's the one who says, listen, these are illegal arrests happening to break up the strike, because the miners don't actually know that the law is being broken. So he tells her, they need evidence to arrest you and hold you. They can't just do it on not liking the look of you, whether you're on a picket line or you're running down High Street in full drag. And so she goes down to the police precinct and makes this argument, basically repeating what he told her, and gets a bunch of the miners out of jail. And that is the moment that really switches their, hesitation to really feeling like, oh wow, these guys are really on our side. And then they have this huge party, and everybody's dancing. Well, not everybody. All the women are dancing, and LGSM is dancing, and a bunch of the miners are sort of standing around like that, not really knowing how to dance. And one of the young miners walks out and goes up to Jonathan after, and the scene shows him and Jonathan talking. And Jonathan's dancing with everyone. It's this great scene. At the end, he goes, "God, I miss disco," and he really enlivens the whole part. It's like a huge party because he really enlivens it. And one of these young, presumably straight miners goes up to the other one who had been talking to Jonathan and goes, basically, what are you talking to him for? And he says, listen, if you want to stand in the corner of the pub for the rest of your life wishing that you could talk to Debbie, that's your business. But I'm going to get a woman, and he's going to teach me how to dance. Right, so Jonathan's action in this scene is a part of what union theorist and labor organizer Jane McAlevey calls whole worker organizing. Right, so union leaders talk about workers, but workers are human beings who have full lives, who have desires outside of their jobs, who want clean water, and who want to have free time to meet their partners. And in this case, this guy wants to learn how to dance. And it's just this really beautiful scene of some of the undoing of this toxic masculinity that is a barrier to meaningful relationship. A real through line in this movie is the women also, the miners' wives, the leaders of the hospitality committee, the ones who feed the strike, literally, the ones who watch the children when the men are on the picket line, and they are the ones who hold the values of the community, who hold these values of generosity and hospitality. Even when they're not sure about a whole bunch of young gay people from London coming in to hang out with them, they nonetheless have these strong values of hospitality that they communicate to one another and that they cite in order to override the bigotry and prejudice that comes up in the movie too. This movie doesn't much mention Margaret Thatcher. It focuses mostly on the miners and LGSM, and I feel it incumbent upon me to mention that though much of the hatred directed at Margaret Thatcher has and had a decidedly sexist bent, there is a disturbing sort of apolitical adoration of Margaret Thatcher's leadership as the first woman prime minister of the UK, and it is a great example of the poison at the heart of whitewashed feminism. These unions were busted by a woman. As the poet says, so long as women do not go cheap for power, please women more than men. I hope that you can hear the sentiment and hear past the binary language in Wendell Berry's work. So speaking of women in leadership, the next thing that happens, the end of the movie, what happens is Sean runs for parliament and wins. This is true, by the way. This is all a true story. After the decline of coal, the people that she represents are mostly working in the service sector, which is mostly women. In Jane McAlevey's book, No Shortcuts, Organizing for Power in the New Gilded Age, she writes about this mostly female service industry workers. She says, they tend to be less structurally powerful economically in the workplace than the mostly male workers of the CIO era, because it's easier to replace them, and because when they do strike, not only the employer but also the consumer immediately feels the repercussion of their collective action. But they are more structurally powerful when it comes to engaging their community in a fight. Women have long understood that issues such as childcare, good housing, quality schools, clean drinking water, safe streets, an end to mass incarceration and police violence are every bit as important as higher wages to the well-being of workers and their families. So on March 3rd, 1985, the strike ended. Thatcher really demolished a lot of the power of organized labor in the UK in a brutal defeat. And 3 months later, at Pride in London, LGSM is there. They have their banner still. Though the strike is over, they're still in solidarity with the miners. And the organizer of Pride comes up to them and is like, you guys are too political. People just want to party. And if you're going to march with your banners, you're going to have to be in the back because, you're kind of bumming everybody out. And we just want to have a nice time. And then someone says, they sort of discuss amongst themselves, well, should they put the banners down or should they march? And then the organizer comes back and goes, okay, never mind change of plans. There are too many of you. You have to be in the front. And they look around at, Mark and his 6 friends and like, what do you mean too many of us? And somebody says, oh, I think he means them. And them is busloads of Welsh miners with huge signs that say miners supports lesbians and gay men. And they brought their union band, all their union banners, and they absolutely flood the demonstration. They lead the march. And the following year, the Labour Party voted finally in the affirmative to add rights for lesbians and gay people to their party manifesto. So this is 1986. It had come up before, but that was the year that it actually passed, due in part to the unanimous block vote of the Mine Workers Union. This, of course, is the sort of mainstream legal backbone for the anti-discrimination laws and eventually marriage equality that would be passed. So that was 1986. In 1987, Mark Ashton died of pneumonia because of AIDS. As the poet says, they say that your main crop is the forest that you did not plant, that you will not live to harvest. Practice resurrection. So on this Labor Day Sunday, I hope that you will receive this story not as a charming tale about the past, but as fuel for the way forward. Call that prophet. Prophesy such returns. Because wherever there is oppression, there are people rising up to resist it. Wherever there is the unlikely practice of solidarity, there is the inbreaking of the kingdom of heaven on earth. Wherever there is shared struggle, there is also shared glory. Live for the unlikely practice of solidarity. As soon as the generals and the politicos can predict the motions of your mind, lose it. Don't be a realist. Don't be reasonable, be joyful, though you have considered all the facts. May it be so for you and so for us all. Amen.
Will you join me in our chalice extinguishing words? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Got a few brief announcements. This afternoon at Country Park at 4:30 p.m., I'll be speaking on a panel called Faith Without Workers is Dead. It's also on Facebook Live. You can hear me talk any week. That's not the particularly exciting part of this, but there are labor leaders from Greensboro who will be there, who will be reflecting on the relationship between faith and organized labor. So if that's of interest to you, come out to Country Park or join them on Facebook Live. Check this past Thursday e-news for the details on how to do that. Who likes the auction? Oh, yes, so many people like the auction. Who likes all the dinners? I know that's right. Great, yep, y'all are great cooks and you are wonderful people who love to share. And so I know that this Thursday evening Zoom meeting to gin up some interest in helping support the auction will be simply flooded with volunteers. Heather is not here this weekend, but if you want more information about that Zoom meeting, where should you look? In the newsletter, that's right. What if you don't get the newsletter? What should you do? Contact Julie. How do you contact Julie? You call her or email her. Her email is, her email, would you say in the e-news? Thanks, Harold. Her email is on the back of your order of service. Yeah, Jim Kalinowski holding up the order of service. That's right. Her email's on the back of the order of service. Who knows how to use a QR code? Raise your hands very high. Okay, so if you don't know how to use a QR code, those people can help you. It's anyone who looks kind of young, plus. Okay. So there's a QR code on the back of the order of service, and if you are new or feeling new or wanting to get more connected, that is our virtual visitors card. That's the best way to get in contact with the church. Tell us what you're interested in, and we will put you in touch with whoever you want to talk to get you plugged in. One of the things that you might be interested in is our small group ministry, which is launching this month. It's called Chalice Circles. These are groups that meet, I think all of them are starting out on Zoom, although they'll make decisions within the group about everybody's feeling of safety and explore the possibility of meeting in person. These are groups to form authentic connection and deep relationship by personal sharing and deep listening. And if that's of interest to you, where can you find more information? In the newsletter. That's right. And now, if you will you turn to everybody joining us online and wave goodbye.